kingdom.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is David Palmer, Leo King, and we are live right now with Deep Astrology, my show where we go deep into the astrology, look at all the aspects to the week, and try and make an understanding of it. And of course, this is the show that everybody loves, so I'm super excited to always be here. Just want to make a quick note. Next week is my last week here in the studio because I'm leaving on tour. So this will be the last Deep Astrology in this setting. I'm hoping to do them on tour as much as I can, but yeah. So you're going to have to probably get most of the information on my app, unfortunately, because that's where I do all my horoscopes and everything, because I will be on tour. So kind of sad, I know. I'm going to try and do a lot, as much as I can on the road, but it all depends on uploading, and it depends on where I'm at, depends on some of the places we're staying. And then I will be at the United Astrology Conference, which is coming up on May 24th through the 29th in Chicago. So if you don't want to come to the tour or anything, you can also come to Chicago, meet me in person. We're going to have a Future Life and Leo King booth there. We're going to be talking a lot about what the future of astrology holds. I'm going to be interviewing astrologers. You can meet me in person there at the trade booth as well. So it's super exciting. The biggest astrology conference in the world, which is coming up in Chicago, May 24th through the 29th. Now let's talk about the astrology. Number one, we've got some pretty major stuff going on this week because this is the last week that Uranus will be in Aries as it moves into Taurus next week. Now remember, at the end of this year, Uranus does retrograde backwards and come back into Aries. So we're not done with Uranus in Aries, but we are definitely moving into Taurus to get a feel for what Uranus and Taurus is going to be like. And of course, next week we'll talk a lot more about Uranus and Taurus when it comes in there. But that kind of brings this week towards an edge because Uranus is at the edge. It's at the last degree. It's literally on a cliff getting ready to come into a whole new entire vibration. Remember, Aries is a cardinal sign about direct motion. I'm doing this, I'm going there, and setting things into motion. And Uranus in Aries is a little funky because Aries is a very self-looked at, identity sign, whereas Uranus is about the collective, about friends, about connections, about service and helping people and fixing things. Where Aries, sometimes the way to fix things is to just knock a hammer on it and beat it until it works. Not putting any Aries down, just using an analogy that Mars is like, right? Because when Uranus is in Mars territory, it's kind of like having a Uranus-Mars conjunction, which is kind of volatile, very intense. I think we've seen a lot of that volatility with violence and guns and bombs that went off and, all over the world, and including bombings that we had like in Boston and everything. I mean, there's a lot that has gone on with Uranus and Aries. And so we're coming to the edge of it. So a lot of this trying to find our connection to our true identity, our true self, our true desires, our true actions that we want to take in our life. I always look at Aries also as the start of the road. Might not necessarily be the road itself, but at least the road we identify in which we're going. Like let's say we're going to go on a mountain trip and we're going to go snowboarding or skiing somewhere. And we say, oh yeah, we got to go that way, right? We're going north, south, east, or west. Aries defines that. And I think that all the cardinal signs have some sort of sense of what we do on our highway of our life. But Aries is the direction in which we want to go. Of course, that course always gets changed. Maybe we switch roads to get to that mountain. But at the end of the day, it was that initial, we're going that way, we're going this way, or identifying that we're going to even go to a mountain. And with Uranus here, I think that at this last degree, there's going to be some really intense things that come this week to us of, kind of out of nowhere, off course. Uranus is definitely not a course maker. It's definitely you think you're on one way and you go a totally different direction that you didn't expect, especially with what we're identifying with, who we want to be, or the course of action in which we take to get to where we want to go, could really bring up some really radical stuff. We start this week with the Sun opposing Jupiter, so today we'll break down in the charts what that means, especially as Jupiter is retrograding right now in Scorpio and the Sun in Taurus, and how this Taurus-Scorpio thing is playing out and how it's going to continue to play out as Uranus enters into Taurus, right? And we have Jupiter in Scorpio. So there's going to be a lot of Taurus-Scorpio stuff and elements in our life that are going to be brought up, and I'm going to really divulge into that today. You know, we have Taurus on one hand, which is a have, right? It wants to have it. It wants to own it. Scorpio wants it, wants to feel it, get the orgasm from it, doesn't mean it'll keep it. Although what's interesting about Scorpio is in the place of emotions, right? It sometimes cannot let go of certain emotions, whereas the weird part about Taurus, even though it's a have and it wants to have things, it won't touch it if it ain't worth it. It won't even have it if it doesn't want to. Just how Scorpio emotionally, if it's not connected to it emotionally, if it doesn't taste good, well, both signs kind of are that way. So they both actually are very similar and very different, and they both control our appetites, they control our hunger, they control a lot of our shadow work too, whether that's the shadow work we do here more kind of on a surface level or the hidden shadow work that we do inside of our souls. There's a lot of shadow work that is coming up right now in our life, and I really want to say or talk about what is shadow work. You know, shadow work is dealing with your authentic true self, about your deeper, real, authentic qualities, the stuff that we maybe not want to expose to people or talk about. There's a lot of that going on right now. There's a lot about looking deeper inside of ourselves in ways that we haven't looked at, really, I think since 2012 through 2015, in that big aspect, especially even a little in 2016. I think 2017 kind of brought us kind of out of the inner world and a lot more of the kind of crazy outer world of where are things going. But I think we're dipping back our toes in, especially now with Jupiter here, to really understand who we really are inside, what we really want. I think, people change, right? And I think the hard part of the shadow work is right now in our lives, I think we came into, Saturn coming into Scorpio at the end of 2012, October of 2012, and kind of changed then really intensely. And we thought, oh, this is probably going to be the new me, and this is who I am. And I think the hard part of this shadow work is we're kind of going back to old parts of ourselves. We are reawakening or re-bringing alive parts of ourselves that maybe we thought would never be there again. So I think it can be complicated, and whether it's relationships or even in maybe the things that we pick to do in our life with goals or ambitions, especially since we're in a heavy Capricorn time right now with these three planets, Mars, Pluto, and Saturn in Capricorn. I think it can make it very difficult for us because, we set these kind of vows, I guess you could say, or some sort of rules or some sort of course in our life. And we change our desires, we change our feelings, we bring back parts of ourselves that, remind us of who we really are. And I think that it's a very difficult time right now to sort out this more deeper underworld of who we really are. And especially since Saturn was there in the late parts of 2012 through the end of August, I guess you could say, of 2015, there was a lot of suppression there. There was a lot of blocking. There was a lot of controlling our urges, our desires. And I think we know what our limits are, but Jupiter now is wanting us to expand in this area. So it's almost like we put the borders up and then we kind of retreated, I think, really far back. Jupiter's pushing us back to the limitation line again in many ways, so we can test and understand those boundaries fully. And I think a lot of this is very difficult right now because, like I said, we're committed to these things in our life, or we think we're committed. And I think that there's this very difficult aspect of Pluto, which happens to be in Capricorn, which is changing the way that we do hold our integrity. Integrity is changing. Is it integrity now of self with Uranus and Aries? That is something that we need to pay more attention to. Is it an integrity now of our true real values and our true authentic self, even if that doesn't go with the traditional aspect of certain things that we put our energy into? I think that's what's very difficult right now is, emotions and more deeper feelings are rising up, and you can't stop them. You can't stop your real authentic self. You can't stop these things. And there's a lot of options. There's a lot of, there's a lot of energy all over the place, to be honest with you, with Sun opposed Jupiter. And it's how do we determine what do we want to have from it? How do we determine where the limits are in these hungers and desires? and what we're going to keep, So I think that, we're going to talk a lot about that, but that's a lot of really what's going on to start this week off with. There's a lot actually going on all over the place, but the other major things is, of course, Mars. Mars is going to come into its shadow period this week. That's a big deal because Mars is not a planet that goes into shadow much. Mars, it takes 2 years to come retrograde, and a little longer. It's like 2 years and a couple months. So, it's one of those planets that you don't see shadow a lot. And what does shadow mean? It's funny that I was even bringing up shadow work. Shadow is when a planet reaches a space into which it will come back in a retrograde motion. So think of it like, kind of like if you were on the sand with a rake and you moved forward and you saw that space from where the rake started to where the rake ends, the rake is going to come backwards in that same zone and shadow and cover that area. And for us, it's going to be at 28 degrees of Capricorn to 9 degrees of Aquarius. And that zone is about to start to be a very important zone in your chart and in our lives, dealing with Mars issues, identity, strength, courage, redirection of our intensity, where we're going, and more importantly, what we desire, what we want, what we're pushing for. And when Mars enters into a shadow period, things get more intense when it comes to the areas of that life. Things get more karmic, I guess you could say, as far as trials, tribulations, glory, wherever you are on the spectrum as far as what karma will be delivered in these areas. And when you start to see the themes that come up now in this area, and especially when it deals with career aspects, goals, and with Aquarius, with people and our connection to people, I think that you're going to notice a lot of team changes, course changes that are going to be pretty dramatic. Usually, even with Saturn in Capricorn, we feel like the train's kind of going in a direction and the tracks are never going to change. I think with this Mars shadow that's going to start for us, we're going to start to see a lot of course changes, a lot of course directions, going in different directions, bends and turns, especially when Mars comes into Aquarius, which is ruled by the planet Uranus, while we're going through major Uranus shifts in our life. Anything can happen, to be honest with you all. So be prepared, as later on this week, I'll show you in the chart, Mars is going shadow, and Mars is going to square Uranus, which is pretty extreme. And I think it's ironic that Uranus is in Aries that is ruled by Mars, and Mars and Uranus are going to square. And I think that that's kind of a funny thing as an astrologer. Maybe I'm an astrology nerd, but we're going to be dealing with heavy issues with our own development of ourself and the world at large, our identity and what we want, and the relationships and if they can come together. It also, Mars squares Uranus, is wanting to break itself free at no matter what the stake is. Sometimes with breaking social norms or breaking norms in our life that we feel like King Kong needs to just come out of the cage even when maybe it's right in the middle of New York City and we shouldn't do that, And that's Mars square Uranus. And to have Uranus entering into Taurus next week with a Mars square, definitely not child's play. We are playing with hot, crazy, electrical, rocket fuel at the same time. So I'm going to talk a lot and show you in the chart because it's actually a lot to dive into, and we're going to show that, and Mercury covering that spot, the moon covering that spot on the same day. This weekend looks gnarly, to be honest with you. I don't think it'll be horrible, but definitely as far as loading into a whole new radical, unpredictable story that I think we've all been in the back of our souls and minds going, what the fuck? How is this shit going to turn out? Guess what? You're getting loaded on the platform to finally start to see what's going to come, I guess you could say, this weekend, which I think is a very major and very big deal, and it's a huge transit. So we're definitely going to be covering that. In between all that stuff, it's a big transit, but because some of these transits seem a lot more intense and bigger and more rare, I didn't bring it up, but the sun is going to trine Pluto this week. So going to be a lot of Plutonian aspects this week, a lot of Uranus aspects. Pluto-Uranus are also going to officially end their square in cardinal signs coming up next week. So I want to talk about how since 2012 and even the buildup since when Uranus entered into Aries in 2010 and 2011, we're talking about an almost decade theme starting to exit. And we're going to talk about the exit stages of the vibration over the last 8 years and how we're starting to feel that effect now. Is, a lot of the story that we've been in over this last 8 years or so has really been about this Pluto square Uranus theme. And now that Pluto is going to continue to stay in Capricorn for a long time. We still got Pluto in Capricorn technically till 2024, although in 2023 Pluto will come into Aquarius. We're going to have Uranus in Taurus. And that is different than Aries, and it's not a cardinal sign. So even though the Pluto and Uranus square is somewhat still within a 10-degree orb, I think that it's going to be interesting to see that technically they're going to move past a 10-degree orb in the future. And we are technically moving out of this phase, what we call the Pluto-Uranus square, which brought up events like the Depression, which brought up events like you going through a massive spiritual, crazy, radical, weird, underground awakening that blew your fucking soul to bits and changed you forever and put you through a chaotic, wild mess inside for the last 2010s, I guess you could say, is the best way to put it. Maybe you're not on planet Earth or anything, but that shit was going down. So, believe it or not, a lot of that's going to start. I'm a mathematician and an astrologer. Like, I didn't go to school for math, so I'm not a mathematician, but I do math for astrology. But long story short, we're coming into a huge ending of a major phase, and we're going to start to see the beginnings of that ending. And we're exiting stage left, but usually when things exit, sometimes there can be a big kind of whoa, and also kind of an intense feeling. So I think we're feeling a lot of the edge right now of this craziness, and especially when you got Uranus coming into a new sign and Mars square Uranus and all these things that are starting to happen. We are talking about platform raising. We are talking about major transitions in life that begin coming into this weekend that are gonna blow your mind. Do not expect the expected. I would definitely prepare for who knows, I'm going with wherever it goes, and I will deal with it with ease and grace and go with the flow, and I know that it will all be okay. But if you want to talk about malfunctions in your life and fuses breaking and popping and, things not working the way that you thought they would, don't be surprised. I think that's the lesson, to not be surprised when these things happen and almost expect the surprise. I know that I've talked a little bit longer before going to the charts on this deeper astrology, but I think it is very important to note that when you look at this week, we are at what I like to call a major crescendo or buildup, and it really does lead towards this weekend. Remember, we also this weekend will have a dark moon in Aries. Dark moons are officially very difficult. 2, they're very difficult in Aries because they're very reactive. They're very like, let's just take action. And this dark moon phase is going to exactly conjunct Uranus at the last degrees and last minutes of Aries while it is squaring Mars. Talk about getting on a platform, and there is no onboarding documents, there is no directions, you just are on a platform and everything starts flying all over the place. Kind of reminds me of Hunger Games when they raise them up into the I guess you could say the Hunger Games, literally. And it's just kind of like a free-for-all. It's like crazy. But in this case, there is no guidebook, or there is no training. There is no preparation. There are no interviews. There are no special glam pieces right before we get on the platform. It's just out of nowhere. What the hell? I'm on a platform. I'm in the Hunger Games. Run, do this. Oh, shit. Ding, 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 ding. Now, if you were to bring up the world stage about all that, I know a lot of people out there are in fear right now. I've been seeing it in people's Facebook posts. People are deeply in fear about the world stage. People are in fear of everything from the doomsday clock to the world events going on with different nations and people making different assumptions, especially that we could be entering into a very gnarly, scary time with war and things like that. And I want you to know that when we have major transitions like Uranus moving into a new sign, it always seems like a fucking circus and crazy clowns all over the place with fucking black tongues looking at you. Ah! Trust me on that one. It definitely always feels like the world is going to come to an end because Uranus is the ruler of the world. The world card, the world itself. And so when Uranus moves into a new sign, the whole world is moving to a new channel. The whole world is stepping into a new place. The whole world is going to a new direction. And so it always feels like chaos when, imagine packing up the world and moving it to a new house. Guess what? We're all on the same planet. All the animals, all the life on this planet is about to literally be moved. So that task is not easy. That task feels unsettling. It's very interesting because there's so much Earth going on in the chart, right? We got Sun in Taurus, we got all these planets in Capricorn. So, I always feel like the amateur astrologer would be like, oh yeah, it's a super stable time, right? And I think that it actually is. But I think that you need to really look deep at your own emotional foundation and realize that it is unsettled. That, it's an unsettling feeling as the physical world is shifting, as the traditions are shifting. I think that we need to look really deep, and we're going to show the chart right now, but I want to say this before we do. Pluto is in Capricorn. We've been talking about this one since 2008. I mean, do you think it's any irony that, Obama came into president at the second that Pluto came into Capricorn? A president that nobody thought could become president, right? Like, every tradition in life is changing, okay? The last time Pluto was in Capricorn was in the 1770s, late 1760s into 1770s. So, we're basing our lives on traditions that are 250 years old. I think that what you have to realize is the traditions in the world right now are changing so much now that we are at the last decan, which means Pluto's at 21 degrees right now, retrograding back to 20 and going to come back to 19. So we're going to come back into the second layer. So, we're kind of like amateur, or what was I going to say? Not amateur. The term is we're kind of like adolescents when it comes to realizing the traditions in life that are shifting. That we are now moving into more intense placements that are showing you that the world that you thought you knew, the world that you have been connected with in your identity, is not going to be the world that it was. It is going to change completely. And all the traditions that you think are normal, and that should stay normal, will not stay normal. They are going to be crazy. They're going to be different. Pluto will not. Pluto is complete death, unfortunately. I mean, but it also brings life to new things. And when it's in Capricorn, it's bringing life to new traditions. So it's interesting. I'll see all over the place, whether it's people in their beliefs of social media or, how people should be in the world. This is a new territory now. You need to look at it like the Wild West. I mean, we're moving into new territory of what the world's going to look like, what the new rules are, what the new traditions are going to be. I mean, we're in a world where even I hate to be very honest with you, the holidays don't feel like the holidays anymore. That's Pluto and Capricorn. Holidays shift. Holidays change. People celebrate things differently now. People celebrate life in different ways. There are so many things that are changing. There's so many things that have been around for a long time that are going to die out forever, unfortunately. You know, my grandfather, I don't know if a lot of people know this, on my mom's side, he owned a big TV repair shop here in Newport Beach, right on the water, for over 35 years. Made amazing money, did antennas, sold rental TVs, because, you know, beach properties don't have rentals. And, you know, when was the last time you saw a TV repair shop? What do we do now? We just throw it away. It's unfortunate, but, you know, things do all change. And the reason why you've seen it change faster than ever, and especially since 2008, is because Pluto entered into Capricorn. And it would be naive of you to be in your life right now as this crazy radical shift of the world moving from one position to a total other. It'd be completely naive for you to try and hold on to a world of old tradition. And I know that old tradition is something that we all like. We all have integrity for old, you know, it's like we have honor for what we appreciate from the way that people hold some sort of code of conduct, I guess you could say. But there were some really, really crazy traditions that go back thousands of years that if they were to be brought up today, we would literally throw you in jail. We would literally disown you or not say you're part of the human species. And we are all coming into that playground right now as we are erasing traditions in the world that are just no longer going to be served anymore. And I think it's very difficult generational-wise, as the generations are ruled by Pluto. And so if you start to look at the generation shift that's going on the planet right now, especially with traditions, you know, the younger generation is the one creating these radical and new traditions. And I think people that have been raised and been grown up in older traditions that have been around for a long time, it can be extremely difficult for you to adhere or to be part of these new traditions that are starting to grow, which I don't think they've been fully understood yet since Pluto's still here. But I mean, these are not stable times when it comes to what are the traditions in life, what is the identity of the world and what will it look like. And the new round will be, what does the world want to create? What does it want to value? What is it going to start to physically look like? What can we change with the physical aspects that we have here on this earth and do something with it? You know, environmental stuff comes up, I think, especially with Uranus and Taurus. Food sources, stuff like that. You know, and it's interesting that all that stuff's going to come. And then when Pluto comes into Aquarius, in the 2020s, we deal with the electrical system and where electricity or fusion energy, solar energy, all these kind of things. So we're moving into a completely new playing field. So if you're going to try and play the game the old way, like I know Babe Ruth played the game awesome, but you know, trying to catch a 91-mile-an-hour fastball with one of those old gloves that Babe Ruth held, I don't think would be fun. And I don't think that your hand would enjoy it either. So coming into the new world is about being open. Coming into the new world is about realizing that if we're going to move forward, you better be ready to move forward as well, because Uranus is a planet that moves forward. It doesn't move backwards. It moves only forward. And if you choose to go backwards and play the game backwards, Uranus tends to do hardcore lessons in order for you to move forward. You know, it does not move backwards. And this is a time to be open for whatever. And also because we're coming into a new round of major fixed energy, another lesson in all this is to be ready, especially for, you know, I think a new world that is a new thing of what it's going to look like in your physical world. What things that you have now in your life are definitely going to change. I mean, I can't lie about that. So we're all in a really weird game right now where we're not really players yet, but I feel that we're about to be loaded into the game and anything goes. And if you hold on to any old notions, or you hold on to, it should look like this, or it needs to be this way, and if you just think about the thousands of years of civilizations that have come and go, the countries at one time that were bigger than others, the governments and how they used to run things, and even just the social norms of what was socially normal at one point that is no longer anymore, I think you'll realize if you're still trying to attach to old things, unfortunately, they're dwindling and dying, and there is a new world that is leaping ahead. Let's take a look at the chart, see what we got going on for this week. So I ran this chart right before we went live, and I'm running it for May the 8th, which is today. I ran it at 5:54 p.m. And today it's the Sun opposed Jupiter. So we start off this Tuesday with Sun opposed Jupiter. This is looking at our true desires and wants, but remember, the Sun in Taurus is what I have, and there is a what you want, but really Scorpio is what you emotionally need. Okay? And this comes to the question of what is a need, like a true 100%, necessary in our life, and what is excess just desire. But Jupiter is teaching the Sun. You have this in your life. Do you even like it? Jupiter is teaching all of us. Think of life like a bank vault. Taurus to me is a bank vault. You can only fit so much in the bank. Whether you want to put a car in there, whether you want to put whatever, unless you have enough good stuff in the bank to slowly build a bigger bank to hold more, which is what typically people do. You go from an apartment to a house to a mansion, then to a compound, then to a castle. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how Taurus works, right? And it takes slow steps, and it builds wealth, and it gets there. Scorpio is kind of instant. It's like, oh, I won the lotto, or I got an investment. Boom, boom, I can do it right away. Bam. Taurus slowly builds it. But there's only so much we can have in our life before it becomes too heavy, right? Taurus rules heaviness. That's why if you see people with a lot of heavy Taurus energy, they can sometimes put on weight because it's like you can only take in so much. And so I think it's important for you to realize, or in other areas, whether they take on too much in other spaces. So, they can take on too much in work, or, it all depends on your own individual astrology. So Jupiter in Scorpio is like, where do we thin things out, and where do we thin it out to a place to where you're going to have everything that's bomb in your little bank, but more importantly than that you love, that you really like, that you're passionate about. Because Scorpio could give a fuck what you got. Like, if it's not into it, like if like a good example, like if you go to somebody's place and they try and show you their guitar collection, and you're not into music, or let's say you're a DJ and you don't even know how to play guitar. To you, that collection isn't worth shit to you. But to that person, it's their whole life. Just like the same way if I go to some chick's house and she shows me all of her makeup, right? Like, I, of course, can be empathetic and love that they're passionate, but I don't wear makeup, so, I'm not going to be as wowed by it as maybe if somebody who had every old astrology book in the world and had all the astrology books from, let's say the Vatican in the vault, I would be like, oh my God, right? I'm all into it. So this Jupiter and Sun aspect is trying to illuminate where in our life do we need to thin things out and consolidate things to only things that truly, really matter to us in our life, that bring us our desire, that bring us our want? So when we go to our vault, when we go to the things that we have in our life, our jobs, our relationships, our careers, our everything, like, do we really want this? Or is it just a burden? I mean, Jupiter in Scorpio is teaching us, where are the burdens? Taurus doesn't really like burdens, right? Taurus will avoid them as much as possible. Scorpio will confront a burden fast. I don't like it. Because Scorpio doesn't want to feel shit it doesn't want to do. Taurus is a good politician because Taurus realizes, oh, I'll put through with the shit for 2 weeks with this person because I know they got good money or they've got the right connection, and guess what? I know where my value is in my thing, and I know that I got to kind of get here to get there and do that. I got to use whatever tools I fucking can. So Taurus can put up with more bullshit than Scorpio can, especially because literally Taurus rules bullshit. So, because it literally is a bull and it does shit. And what is the opposite side of Taurus? Scorpio. So why do you think Scorpio cannot deal with bullshit? Because the opposite side of Taurus is Scorpio. And Scorpios hate bullshit. You can't bullshit a Scorpio because they ain't no bull, they're scorpion. And guess what? They're the little scorpion on the ground getting fucking shit on by the bulls. And they fucking hate it. So guess what? This is a time where you cannot bullshit anymore. No more bullshit. No more bullshit about my, am I really holding on to this just to hold on to it? Am I holding on to this just to have it? To fill up my value system, which for somewhat might actually think that it's going to make me maybe more popular or fit in the world more, be part of society in a way that I want to be with South Node still in Aquarius. This is where Jupiter is trying to teach us, in a deep retrograde motion, a deeper inner look at, does that tickle your fancy anymore? And it's hard. Jupiter is usually one that brings, the most benevolent energy in the world, right? Just bounties of gifts. And the gifts that are coming now are gifts of harsh truths that are here to save you from holding course towards an iceberg on a Titanic, from staying in a place that will eventually have something in your bank or vault that will rot because of your undesirable placements or your unwillingness to truly even put your most powerful energy forward, because Scorpio does rule sex. And so it's interesting that sex brings out the life force in us. And, fucking a blow-up doll is one thing. Fucking a real person's another. And I know that analogy is pretty gnarly, but in Taurus, we're realizing what in our life are we putting our life force to that isn't really conduing that back to us, that isn't bringing that life force truly in the way that we feel our life force back. An orgasm between two people is the amazing feeling of two life forces coming together, hopefully at the same time. It's the only way I like to do it. But when that happens, there is no other place in the universe you can go but to a place of 100% complete shun. Right? Where are the missing completions in the things we have in our life right now? And there's a lot going on during this Sun-Jupiter opposition. Let me tell you. One, it's always good to look at the planets that rule Scorpio and Taurus, since this is where the Sun and Jupiter is. Venus is in Gemini, so this is questions about, because it's Taurus too, but it's questions about our relationships big time. It's questions about the projects we're doing, maybe making some changes. It is Gemini, having some crazy conversations, changing our mind about things. This is also Pluto, which happens to be the ruler of Scorpio, which happens to be in retrograde, and it is in somewhat of a trine to the sun. And it is also at the same time, again, going to these traditional aspects of, is this really what we really want in our life? So there's a lot here to kind of pay attention to, because I think that when we look at this all together, it's like, what really, in essence, is it that we truly are ready to kind of change in our lives? Because also, remember, Scorpio rules change, and change is something that is very hard, and there's change, and then there's extreme transformation. And I think that there's a very deep transformation going that's, taking its time, since we are in Capricorn. And I think that we can all feel it. It's like every week goes by, wow, yeah. It's like focusing on the transformation and not turning our heads away from it from too long, and watching the caterpillar become the butterfly, and watching every step. It's like watching every little increment about these issues in our life, about these things that we do have, and what needs to change, and what we feel more deeply connected to, and what we don't, and what we really want to bring our life force to. And I think that there's like the feeling of hunger, or the feeling of emptiness can come from the Sun opposed Jupiter on itself, and especially when they're in Taurus and Scorpio, it could feel empty. It could feel like you have a mansion with every sports car and the pool you want, and you have all the money in the bank, yet you don't feel connected to how you're getting that money, or you don't feel connected to the partners you're with, or you don't feel connected to anything, to where your life force is, where really maybe it's riding your horse, or maybe it's taking a walk down the beach, or maybe it's as such taboo things as, who knows? When you go into the taboo of Scorpio, it could be anything. It could be sexual things. Could be, anything that brings you that hunger. And especially since Jupiter is starting to trine Neptune, these are definitely escapable places. Whether they're drugs, whether they're spiritual meditations, whether they're places in our soul that are going to fill our hunger zones, that are going to bring us the ultimate completion. And that's the quest. Right now is the quest for completion, the quest for divinity and completion, the quest for 100% connection that we feel like is on the same playing field, that we feel like is on the same energetic vibration, that we feel like is in the same understanding of our reflection of ourself and our true image of who we are on the inside. Let's move forward into this week. The next chart that I've got pulled up for you guys when things start to get more intense is going to be here on May 11th. And the reason why I picked May 11th is it is the Sun trine Pluto. And it also is the beginnings of Mars entering shadow. I told you 28 degrees. So we're reaching the space that Mars is starting to understand, okay, things are going to change. Also, if you look up here into Aries, there's a lot going on. We got the moon that's going to start to enter its dark phase, not exactly on the 11th, but we will start to see it on the 12th and 13th. But the moon's also touching Chiron. There's a lot going to be going on starting from Friday into the weekend as the platform starts to load. And I think the Sun trine Pluto aspect is always, okay, we've learned a lot from Jupiter, right? That was in opposition. We've learned a lot of our desire. So what are we going to take that we have? Think of Taurus, like I said, the bank, and where are we going to apply it to where we're going to reach in our life? This is Mars also at the last day of not being in shadow, because it's really kind of more the middle degree or the middle minutes that Mars is technically shadow. So this is kind of like the last day before, I think we have to go deep inside of, the paths in which we're ready to kind of shift. This is also a moon in Aries, and a lot of Aries and Mercury as well, coming close to Uranus. These are a lot of epiphanies and insights and a lot of changeability in what we want, where we're going to go, how we really feel. So it's almost like the mask starts to really come off this weekend, and the truth really starts to come out, and things start to get, I don't want to say crazy, but they start to reveal themselves in a way that maybe we weren't ready for, maybe we weren't prepared for. Like I said, again, I would just prepare for the unpreparedness of going through experiences that maybe you're not prepared for. And unfortunately, there's still no Cancer in the astrology. So I think no matter how much, it's kind of like the doomsdayers, right? Who have their doomsday vills and they have enough water saved for an empty day, or they carry every tool in the back of their truck, yet it's the one part that breaks on the truck that you don't have a tool for. It's kind of or your doomsday thing gets so old that actually it's more toxic to be in there than up on air because there's too much lead or there's too much rust, or it's like those funny scenarios that are coming up in our life that to be prepared for as we, I think, unearth the more deeper layers of our true identity, our true self, our true want. But I think when we get to that place and we start to come into that space this weekend, I think it's like one of those conundrums where we realize we've already known this. We've already been feeling this. We already have been identifying with this. And I think that's what's going to be the hard part, is that realization. Now, the 12th is pretty major. It's actually what I think is the platform loading date into this interesting 3-day weird world of shifts before the big shift of Uranus. One is the sun's still trining Jupiter at 21 degrees. But look at this. Mercury is starting to conjunct Uranus, but Mercury is going to start to square Mars. And Mars and Mercury squares are very intense. They are blurting out words, communications, not thinking maybe fully about what actions we're taking. And with Mars officially entering shadow that day, at the same time that Mercury is squaring Mars, with Uranus on top of it, it's a little bit chaotic in all truth. I think that the chaotic piece in all this is, with Uranus on top, Mercury starts to have all these revelations. Oh my gosh, this is what I want, this is how I am. We've just had Sun Jupiter this week. Venus is in Gemini, still stimulated out of its mind, ready to just, make change, and it squares Mars. And Mars is in Capricorn going, no, 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 come up with a plan, stick to the plan, this is where we were going. And Mercury is like, no, man, I'm sorry, I'm bored. That path is not the path that I want to go on, man. Mercury, you got to remember, is a little crazy, wild, changes his mind, her mind. Remember, Mercury is all over the place. Mercury can shift, is a shapeshifter, okay? And Mercury's now on top of Uranus, starting to get a lot of crazy ideas. Oh my God, now, yeah, that's it right there. Remember, Uranus's epiphanies are when things come to a completion. And all the fixed signs are about completion. But it's understanding that this completion that we realize is going to be some really fucking hard actions that we have to really start to understand that we're going to take, and some very hard choices that we need to communicate or talk about or speak about or blurt out or push out there or change course. This is where courses start to change when you're not prepared. The moon in Aries emotionally reacting to things. And look at it, the moon's going to start making its squares over to Pluto and Mars that night, as Mercury's going to come on top of Uranus and start to square Mars. This is intense. This is a definitely extreme day. And I think that when you look at it all, you're going to realize at the end of the day, well, should I have done that? Should I have not? That's up to you. I think that, it's the battle of Mars square Uranus, the battle of Mars square Mercury at the same time. I mean, ideas change. We see things differently. We get crazy epiphanies that change our mind. Mercury conjunct Uranus is a major change of identity. It's walking into the party and saying, hold on one second, I want to go into the car, I'm going to put on different pants. What? It's going on a date with somebody and right when you're walking in, they go, you know what? I don't feel like going to that dinner with you. I just got a text from a friend and I'd rather go do that. And then bouncing. That's Mars square Uranus, Mercury square Mars, like Mercury conjunct Uranus square Mars, all that. It's just wildly crazy shit that you weren't ready. Like, it looks like it's all going this way, and it looks like it's all going this direction, and then what the? Especially at the last degree of Aries, which is an ego-centric space. And then on top of it, you've got this major aspect of Chiron there now, and you've got the moon in Aries now. I mean, this is just like a heavy Aries load of epiphanies, and I want this, and this is where I'm going, and the hunger. That hunger. That hunger's there. And that hunger will drive you insane. You know, it reminds me of this really dark movie called Ravenous. I'm sure some people have seen it. Some people might not want to see it. It's a story about a guy out in the army who's stationed out in like Colorado in the 1800s. And anyway, long story short, they become cannibals out there, and the hunger kind of takes them over of cannibalism. It's a horrible movie, but it was very, I don't know, as a kid or as like a teen, I thought it was gnarly and intense. But kind of reminds me of like, you know, I'm not saying cannibalism's the thing that this is turning into, but you never know what I'm going to say on this channel. But it is this hunger that takes us over. And almost undeniably, it's so hard to control because even though Mars, Pluto, and Saturn are there, you know, it's like trying to control our hunger can frustrate us to a point with all this Aries energy and with Taurus and what we want and what we need. It's just kind of like, are we putting in ourselves in torture? I think it's, you know, torture, which is the best way to describe this weekend. Self-inflicted torture. It's not the outside world that's creating the torture. It's the torture of us not stepping into or having the courage to realize, okay, I have these desires, I have these hungers, this is what I want. All right, let me make some hard choices, but let's plan them efficiently, let's plan them correctly, and let's do it with integrity, and we won't have to do that. But I feel like these doorways that have integrity written all over them are somewhat holding us back from what we want. And in many ways, we're having to learn that integrity of self is necessary in order to live a happy life. Instead of this kind of oversaturation right now of what is the most integral thing to do, or what is the thing that is the right thing to do, or these old traditions of how the world or how we've been conditioned through our school systems, our families, our friends, the news, like, well, we should be doing it by this, playbook. Capricorn's the playbook, but it's like, if you want to win the Super Bowl here, maybe you got to throw a fucking play that the other team ain't expecting. And that's Mars square Uranus, is throwing the playbook out and, having the lineman come back and be the quarterback and throw a long bomb. Like, nobody's expecting that, But it's also how to win the game. Instead of sit there and torture and realize they know it's fourth down, they know we're going to throw the long bomb with a shotgun, and I know I'm using a football analogy, but it's like, am I just going to play the traditional handbook, and we already know they've got the defense to do it, and it's a long shot from us ever really getting there by playing these kind of traditional roles in our life and these kind of traditional playbooks and these traditional rules of how I should live and how I should be. And of course they're important because they're still there, but why torture yourself in a life or in a self or putting on a mask in which you don't want to be? And that's what this weekend's about, is loading that platform and how to deal with that. So Sunday, let me show you guys this. This is when it gets the most extreme. So Mars is officially in shadow, okay? Because it's at 28:55 and Mars retrogrades past 28:55. But it's this. Mercury conjunct Uranus with the moon close by, and then Mercury moves into Taurus. The moon moves over Uranus, and Mars later in the day moves to 29. So I'll show you. Well, this conjunction is pretty intense. This is where it's like a dark moon. And what is a dark moon? See how, what I'll do is I'll do a little drawing. So, well, I don't even have to, but a dark moon means you can't see the moon at night, because the moon is coming close to coming in front of the sun. It's not there yet. So the only time you can see the moon is really early in the morning, right before sunrise. And it looks dark. It looks evil, I'll be honest with you. And the ancients always say to take during a dark moon phase, to just chill out and let things pass. But when you have a dark moon on Uranus square Mars, a dark moon on Mercury, leaving signs and coming into Taurus, needing stimulation in things we want and desire. I mean, the cusp between Aries and Taurus is heavy desire, heavy wants, heavy needs, and very selfish. It's a very selfish placement. And I hate to use the analogy, but do you know who was born on the cusp of Aries and Taurus? Was Adolf Hitler. So, not saying for all you April 20 babies out there that you're all like Adolf Hitler or you're all selfish, kind of, overly. But this area, when planets get there, can activate those vibrations. It's no coincidence to me that 420, the day in which people smoke marijuana, is also at this same degree. And it's a very selfish thing to say, I don't care what you think, I don't care what's going on, I'm going to motherfucking smoke weed. It's a very I don't care, I'm doing it anyway. I don't care about the grocery store, bitch, 420. I've literally been in a grocery store in Hollywood on 420 and seen a motherfucking dude light up a fucking blunt and puff it in the store, and everybody be like, dude, get out of here. And he's like, I don't care, it's 420. I'm like, damn. Anyway, so for a dark moon to happen here, with all these big squares to Mars and Uranus, I think, I've also noticed in not only my personal life, but in other people's charts and lives, Then on dark moons is when they react, and especially a dark moon in Aries is a very high probability of reacting or changing the story or fights. The moon square Mars is also a very difficult aspect, especially a dark moon square Mars and a Mars in shadow. I mean, this is definitely bringing up some really radical energy of, some very harsh emotions, some very harsh blows to the ego, some very intense ego fangs coming out. And it's all while, let's look at this. I mean, Uranus, right? I mean, 2953. I mean, on the edge. Talk about independence of self or self-independence. While all these activations of Mercury and the moon are there remember, all with Mars pushing, activating them even more intensely, which is pretty fucking gnarly, to be honest with you all. I'm sorry that I'm cussing my eyes out tonight, but this shit's no joke. Peaceful day? Now, later in the day, hours later, look at it, we're still at 9:34 a.m. on May 13th. Mercury comes into Taurus, and look at Mars, 28:59. Later in the day, it comes to 29 degrees. And it's at the exact time that, look at, Mars is going to be squaring the moon on top of Uranus, and then Mercury's moving into Taurus. I mean, this is like major transitions and starting to understand what this new Uranus and Taurus phase is going to be about. The events that come up this weekend, the events that peak by Sunday, are literally about what's going to happen with the beginning aspect of wherever this Uranus transit's going. There's, I think, going to be a very weird day on the 14th, that Monday, because if we look at the chart, the moon will now be in its dark phase in Taurus, but at least it will stabilize because the moon is exalted there. Mercury's there. Uranus is at the last degrees, and it's the last day of Uranus in Aries. And here's Mars at 29 degrees, so it's the last day and a half of Mars in Capricorn at 29, so there's some extreme edge and I think an unsurety of where it's all going to go after kind of letting the fangs out or letting your true identity out or letting out how you feel. It's definitely turbulent. And I think it's about finding your inner stability in the middle of turbulence throughout this week, throughout this weekend with the unpredictability. On a world stage, I mean, we can see, definite threats to society, to countries. This is definitely going to be public figures saying things in public that maybe they should have thought about more with Mercury square Mars, but maybe with Mercury conjunct Uranus, it was something that needed to be said to understand things better, or maybe it is a good idea, just maybe it's not maybe what people want exactly, or it's not going against, or it's going against traditions. There's a lot of things that are really, the best word that I could describe it, touchy. It's like that game Operation. Every time that you're trying to pull out something, like you're touching the motherfucking shit all the time. It's like trying to dock a boat in a storm. You're going to hit, boom, I'm going to hit the dock. Boom, oh my God. Oh, it's touchy right now. It's like building a house of cards. Like, right when you're going to put on the card and you think, oh, it's all good, this is the last card, the whole thing can fall. Hope you're all not scared. I'm not trying to scare everyone. I'm just trying to empower people to realize that. I think a lot of this energy is saying, and I don't know why I'm getting this right now, and it's kind of sad I'm getting this from my guides, but this is also a lot of, not only is it transitions spiritually, but a lot of transitions of people who are going to be here on the planet and some people who are going to leave. I think there's going to be a lot of in and outs. I think there's going to be a lot of crazy births. I think there's going to be a lot of crazy people who are choosing to leave the planet at this week. That, so and this is bringing up a lot of transitions with not only the world, remember, getting ready to move to a new direction, but generationally, we're about to see kind of, I believe, the baton being handed over. Because if you think about this, and we'll show this on a chart really quick here. Let me erase all this stuff here. When you get Uranus moving into Taurus now, okay, and you have Pluto, the ruler of generations, in Capricorn, the second Uranus enters Taurus, there is a new, and it's an alignment, there is a new generation that is rising up. And I think this might sound really crazy, but I actually believe what a lot of people, of course, are predicting financial markets and all that shit. That's great. And I get it. And that's going to be major. I know financials are going to be, and money and all that stuff is going to change forever. And government stuff's going to change forever. I get all that stuff. I mean, every astrologer is saying that on the fucking planet. Okay, we get that shit. I think what people aren't looking deeper at is with Uranus moving into Taurus and with Pluto now in Capricorn and now both in Earth sign. Now, they're not in an exact trine or anything, but it's the beginnings of the Uranus-Pluto trine. Because now we've moved out of the square. Is over this next course of the next 4 or 5 years, the generational switch is going to be extreme. We're not going to be seeing commercials for certain generations like we were anymore. This is the baton passing on to new people, whether it's in careers. This is the baby boomers retiring. Uranus coming into Taurus is the baby boomers retiring. And is the end, I don't want to say it's the end of them because there's no way that that's the end of them, but they are moving into a whole new place in society. They're moving into a whole new place of what they do for the world, and they're moving into more of a teaching role instead of a leading role. And now Generation X, Y, and the millennials will be the new way. And I know that scares the bejesus out of the baby boomers. But that's what I think the biggest shift of Uranus moving into Taurus is the generational shift to a new world. That the new world is going to have a new driver. And this also is going to be interesting in how it works with the presidency and how it works with, governments and stuff, is you're going to see that people from the younger generation are going to lead coming up. But what's interesting is when the elections in America happen in November is when Uranus is back in Aries. So I don't think that the election that's coming up is bringing in new people that are with the newer ideas, unfortunately. I mean, I'm just going to be very honest. I actually believe the elections that come up are more of the same or more of the old. I do believe, though, that it's set in motion now, and I think those ideas are going to be brought to surface, and I think it will be undeniable. I think a lot of people out of fear are going to go vote for however they see or whatever, but I believe 2020's election is the new generational shift and a more younger vibration coming in with values that are with traditions we haven't seen yet, that are going to be brought to a new traditional platform and space. Anyway, I got to end the report here, but my final words of this week would be, your integrity is always there, right? But if you don't have integrity for how you feel in your heart, who you really are, what you want to do with your life, the life you want to live, then what about the integrity that you have for yourself? What about the integrity you have for God and the life force that brought you down here to live a beautiful life? And I think it's very difficult because we put our own stigmas, we put our own life in its own jail. And this is where we have to fight for the life we want, how it's going to look, and it starts with, making tough decisions. And it's a man or a woman in integrity that makes decisions that is going to better their life and be better for all parties, because that's Uranus and Aries, right? Making decisions for yourself that's the best for all parties. And with this Jupiter aspect in retrograde, look at that, what's best for all parties is how true feelings are. What's best for all parties is, how you really feel, right? Or what the truth really is, right? Instead of buying the bullshit. The Sun in Taurus, and now Mercury comes into Taurus, and it's like this is about no bullshit anymore. And it's that no bullshit feeling that comes up that brings us to a platform in which we have to face it, we have to deal with it, or we're going to carry it with us and smell like ass everywhere, wherever we go. I'm on tour, so I'm leaving next week. My first stop is Denver. That show's almost pretty much sold out. Looks like we're out of VIP in Denver. I think we're almost sold out in Chicago. And New York's one of our biggest shows. That one's almost sold out, but there are still general admission tickets available. Might be some VIPs left. Check it out, leokingevents.com. We need help in DC, so if anybody out there can reach out to people in DC who want to come. That's the only show that's looking kind of low right now. But go to leokingevents.com. I'd love to meet you in person and talk about this crazy stuff. I'm doing individual shows in each city with a different talk in each city, so not every city's getting the same talk. Because, of course, I'm leaving on tour, most of my astrology, of course, will be on every day on Future Life. So go to futurelife.tv. Check it out, 7-day free trial. It's only $5.99 a month. And you get every horoscope, and I've got 11 other practitioners on there giving you videos every day, weekly, blogs. I mean, it's a one-stop shop, And if you want some quality, what's going on in the universe, how to get an idea of what's going on, I would definitely check it out, futurelife.tv. And if you don't want to miss me while I'm gone and all this stuff, of course I'll go live when I can, but being able to sit here with the chart and pull it through, I'm not going to be able to do that for a while. So next week will be my last deep astrology in the studio, the way that you see it, until I come back late June. Anyway, thank you for all your support. Oh, yeah, the last thing, May 2018 horoscope is still available. That is, if you want to know what's coming up here in May and how this Uranus stuff's going, and I'll be honest with you, and I said it even here on last week's Deep Astrology, May doesn't really start till this May 12th deal, okay? So you're not missing out if you haven't got the May horoscope yet. The May horoscope is gnarly. Go from May 12th to the end of the month. You will be blown away. I do an hour-and-a-half special presentation. I even go through the 12 sun signs in there and talk about how Uranus and Taurus will affect them. Check it out now at inclusiveastrology.com. Anyways, thanks for all your support. I truly appreciate it. Thanks for spreading the word. Please follow me on Instagram for those that did. I'm only like 400 away from 10,000 people, so I can start doing swipe ups and more lives to where I can do stuff. So I'd love for you to follow me on Instagram, and please spread the word. I do this organic. I don't buy likes. I don't buy followers, and I don't build my following off just doing cheap, free sun sign horoscopes that just are reading off a teleprompter or the computer in front. I really build this organically, and I truly appreciate all your support. Thanks so much, and I will see you on the next Deep Astrology.